Hi. Hi, I'm Jiansu, and you just saw me coming in, and you saw how I'm dressed today. And before I even started talking, I bet you had formed your first impression on me. Now let me ask you just two details. How old am I, and where am I from? Well, if I were you, I would have guessed this is this like 30-year-old crazy guy from Korea who tries to bring breakdance back to Germany. Well, the true answer is I'm 43 years old, and I was born here in Munich, and I grew up here in Germany. Now, how many of you have guessed this right? Please raise your hands. Okay. Now, this happens to me all the time. People misjudge my age or my origin, but think about yourself now. Do you remember that somebody has misjudged yourself? Maybe unfair. Or do you remember that it was a time that it was you who has misjudged somebody else? Today, I'm going to talk about why we are likely to make such mistakes in our judgment and how we can avoid making these mistakes by a simple principle. But before I start explaining, let me ask you just one more question. Do you get annoyed by people who always want to be right? Please raise your hands. Okay. Well, this reminds me of a woman I met 7 years ago when I started my PhD in psychology. she told me, oh, Chan, it's great that you do this research in psychology, but, for me, this is not necessary. Because when it comes to people, I am always right. No, really. I have always observed that people behave exactly the way I predicted. Well, this got me thinking. How can she be so sure of herself? Or maybe is it an illusion? And if it is an illusion, are there any psychological mechanisms behind that illusion? Well, I found a whole body of research in psychology explaining this illusion. It is called the research on cognitive biases. You might know that a cognitive bias is a systematic tendency that leads our thinking away from a correct judgment. Psychology has found over 50 cognitive biases in the last 50 years. But there's one question that has not been answered yet. And this question was raised by one of my students when I taught psychology at university. She simply asked, how do I know that I experience such a bias in my daily life? And she was right. Researchers have found and analyzed these biases in a lab, under laboratory conditions, with no connection to reality. So I have a new challenge. How can I explain these cognitive biases without the academic background and select only those which are relevant in our daily life? Well, I thought a very long time on that. But finally, I found a fundamental underlying principle. I found out that there's a trap our mind falls into. I call this trap the mental harmony puzzle.